Your hand is already on the door. You've rehearsed this in the shower, in the car, and in the long silence after another fight that went nowhere. You know you should go, yet the handle doesn't turn. We explain this hesitation through guilt, or the belief things are complicated, or the hope people eventually change. These narratives suggest the decision to stay is a choice made by the heart. A more clinical reality often hides behind those feelings. Without your permission, a clerk inside your mind has been keeping a ledger, running a quiet calculation in the dark. This internal accountant records every year you gave, every argument you smoothed over, and every time you defended this person to someone who saw the situation more clearly than you did. This mental balance sheet creates the weight on the door handle. Walking away feels like defeat because your internal math refuses to write off such a massive long-term investment. In 1995, researcher Carol Rusbult studied women at a shelter for the abused to find what actually predicted whether a woman would stay away or return to her abuser. She found that the severity of the violence was not the primary predictor. Instead, commitment was tied to 3 specific variables. The investment model has 3 levers. First is satisfaction, surprisingly the weakest. Second is quality of alternatives. If the outside future looks bleak, leaving costs more. Third is investment size. Massive past investments make leaving feel like total loss. This combination of high investment and low alternatives creates a psychological trap. It generates a level of commitment that mimics devotion, even when satisfaction has long since disappeared. This refusal to cut losses is a well-documented glitch in human logic. Organizational psychologist Barry Staw called it the escalation of commitment, a phenomenon where people double down on failing projects rather than admitting a mistake. The drive to maintain a failing choice is strongest in the person who originally made it. Having defended this person to your family and friends, you fight to make the relationship work to prove your initial judgment wasn't wrong. We see this same logic in military history. In 1965, George Ball sent a memo to President Johnson regarding the Vietnam War, warning that the commitment of troops was creating a process that would soon become irreversible. Ball argued that the true cost of retreat wouldn't be the future resources saved, but the humiliation of acknowledging everything already spent was for nothing. The nation was trapped by its own history. Staying an extra year in a painful relationship often follows this same military logic. It is a desperate attempt to validate the 5 years already lost, ignoring the fact that those years are gone regardless of what happens next. Even when the math is clear, physical paralysis often remains. Martin Seligman's research on learned helplessness explains why the ability to act eventually shuts down. When subjected to unpredictable pain that seems inescapable, the nervous system eventually concludes that effort is useless. Even when the door is later opened, the subject often stays put, having lost the biological drive to seek an exit. Years of being belittled or blamed can mirror this effect. Constant second-guessing trains a person to shrink into compliance. You stop reaching for the handle because your brain has been conditioned to believe that movement only leads to more pain. This paralysis is a conditioned response of the nervous system. The door stays shut because the repetition of the struggle has effectively exhausted the will to try again. To understand why this trap is so effective, we have to look closer at the alternatives variable. The world outside often looks like an empty void because that perception has been carefully cultivated. This happens through the slow erosion of your outside life. Friendships drift away after too many canceled plans, and independent hobbies are dropped to avoid tension, until your sense of self-worth is entirely tied to the person you are trying to leave. These are the mechanics of isolation. By discouraging outside ties and fostering self-doubt, a partner can effectively manipulate the investment model. They don't need to lock the door if they can convince you there is nothing for you on the other side. Your internal accountant looks at a future that has been systematically emptied and concludes that staying is the only survival strategy. This reinforces the sunk cost trap, making the exit look like a cliff rather than a new beginning. Breaking this cycle requires a clean separation of 2 concepts, the cost already lost and tomorrow's choice. Your brain glues them together, but they are independent variables. The 5 years are gone. Whether you stay or leave, they have no logical place in your decision.
The only unrigged question is this. Knowing everything you know now, if you were standing here for the first time today, with none of this history, would you walk into this relationship again? If the answer is no, then the investment is already lost. Recognizing that a tower is built on a failing foundation provides the justification to stop building. You are allowed to put the weight down and step into the room you haven't let yourself imagine yet.